Everyone knows what happened at 284 Green Street. Most people know about the Enfield Poltergeist, or at least, everyone knows the story. The knocking, the furniture, the strange voice. The journalists and investigators who spent months trying to work out what was happening inside that house. But what most people don't know is what happened a few doors down. I know, because I lived there. And for 3 weeks in 1977, there was a man who stood on the opposite side of Green Street after midnight. At first, he just watched number 284. But then, he started watching the other houses too. And then eventually, he stopped outside of ours. I was 17. And the night I made the mistake of letting him know I'd seen him, something came into our house. But I don't think it was him. Not anymore. We lived 4 doors down from 284. We were close enough that if someone slammed a car door outside their house, we'd probably hear it. But not so close that our families were constantly in and out of each other's kitchens. Green Street wasn't frightening. It was a nice street. The people were friendly. It was very ordinary. Terraced and semi-detached houses, small front gardens, cars parked half on the pavement, curtains glowing orange at night, people coming home from work, kids shouting, and dogs barking behind fences. You could walk along it 100 times and never remember anything about it, which is probably why I noticed the man. Because he didn't belong. The first time I saw him was just after 1 a.m. I'd gone downstairs for water. There was a small window above our kitchen sink that looked directly onto the street, and while I was filling the glass, I noticed someone standing across the road. It was a man, tall, wearing a dark coat. His hands were down by his sides. He wasn't looking at our house. He was looking several doors along, towards number 284. I didn't think it was a ghost. I didn't think it was anything supernatural. I just thought it was a drunk guy, or a husband who'd been chucked out by his wife. So I took my water upstairs. But 20 minutes later, I checked again, and he hadn't moved. He hadn't moved an inch. He hadn't put his hands in his pockets. He hadn't shifted slightly. Nothing. Same place, same position, looking at the same house. I remember thinking it was odd. Then I went to bed. 2 nights later, he was back. Except this time he wasn't outside 284. He was further down the street, facing another house. I remember watching him from my bedroom window. I couldn't see his face, but there was enough streetlight to make out a coat and trousers. Maybe grey hair. Maybe just pale skin. He looked completely ordinary. But that's what made it uncomfortable, because nothing about the man himself was frightening. Only what he was doing was weird. Standing completely still at nearly 1 a.m, staring at someone's upstairs windows. Then a car came along Green Street. It was driving slowly and it passed between us. For maybe a second I couldn't see him. And when the car moved on, the man was standing closer to our house. Not much, perhaps 20 feet, but I hadn't seen him walk. I stared at the pavement, trying to work out whether I'd simply got the distance wrong. Then the man turned away, and for the first time, he walked. He went slowly down Green Street, then disappeared round the corner. I told myself I'd imagined it. The next day, I mentioned it to Mrs. Chapman. She was an older neighbour who lived opposite us. She'd lived there longer than anyone else I knew. She was the sort of neighbour who could tell you who owned every car on the street and which houses had changed their curtains. We didn't need security cameras back in those days. We had Mrs. Chapman. I asked her if she'd seen a man standing around late at night, and she stopped what she was doing and looked at me, kind of funny. "Where?" she asked. So I pointed. "Across there." She looked toward 284, then at me. "What did he look like?" I told her. "Tall, older man, dark coat." She didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then she picked another sheet out of the basket. "If you see him again, don't stand at the window." I laughed. I thought she was joking. But she wasn't. She was looking at me deadly serious. "Why?" I asked. She clipped the sheet to the line, then said, "Because once he knows which window you're watching from, he'll come closer." And that was all she would say. I should have listened to her. I should have just left it. But I didn't. Because 17-year-olds are idiots. They're curious and want to know what's going on. The more somebody tells you not to do something, the more you want to know why. So I started looking for him. For 3 nights, there was nothing. And by the 4th, I was almost disappointed. Then, just after midnight, there he was, back outside 284, wearing the same coat, in the same position, watching the upstairs windows. I stood behind my curtain, looking out of a small gap. He didn't move. I waited. Nothing. And this is the part I've regretted ever since. Because I opened the curtain. Not all the way, just enough. I wanted him to look. I wanted proof that Mrs. Chapman was talking rubbish. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then his head turned. He didn't turn his shoulders or his body, just his head. Slowly. Until he was looking directly at my bedroom window. I dropped the curtain. My heart was absolutely hammering, and immediately I felt ridiculous and embarrassed to have been caught spying on someone. Of course he'd seen movement, and looked up. He was probably wondering why I was watching him. I waited perhaps 30 seconds, then looked again. And the pavement was empty. I felt relief, complete relief. But then, 3 soft taps came from the window. I froze. My chest seized and I could barely breathe, because I was facing the window, and the sound had come from the glass, right in front of me. But there was nobody outside, and my bedroom was upstairs. I slept with the curtains closed, or at least I tried to. And then, sometime after 2, I heard footsteps, not from the landing, but from outside. There was a narrow strip outside, just above the downstairs bay window. It wasn't really a roof. There was just enough space for rainwater and pigeons. Nobody could comfortably walk across it. But something did. 1 step. Then another. Slow. Heavy enough that I could hear the weight through the wall. I lay completely still, trying not to panic. Then a shadow crossed the curtains. Not the shape of a full body, just 2 dark, vertical shapes moving past. Legs. Someone was walking just outside my bedroom. They stopped, and I could hear breathing. Then a man's voice spoke from the other side of the glass. 2 words. wrong house. Then the footsteps moved away. I didn't look out. The next morning, I didn't tell anyone. Not even Mum or Dad. Definitely not Mrs. Chapman. Because saying it out loud would make it real. Instead, I'd tried to convince myself that I'd dreamt it. And by the next day, that did actually seem like common sense, like an obvious explanation. I'd been thinking about the man, and Mrs. Chapman had frightened me with that stupid warning. My mind did the rest, and my imagination had gone into overdrive. That explanation worked quite well, up until that evening. There was a police car outside number 284, and people were standing near the house. Someone I didn't recognise went in. My mum was talking to a neighbour over the fence. Something had happened again. I asked what, but she said she didn't know, then added, "That poor family." I looked across the street. There was no man, and for the first time that day, I doubted my own explanation about it being my imagination. Over the next week, I noticed a pattern. If the man was outside 284, then our house was quiet. If I didn't see him, something happened. Not furniture moving or stuff being thrown. Nothing dramatic. Just little things. Like the bathroom door open when everyone remembered closing it. The kitchen light being switched on at 3 a.m, or our back gate unlatched. Then came the voices. I heard my mum calling me to come downstairs when she hadn't, and my sister shouting from her bedroom while she was sitting beside me watching television. One time, I heard Dad cough in the kitchen. I walked in, but the room was empty. Then Dad walked through the front door behind me. He'd been out for 20 minutes. That was when I stopped thinking the man was trying to get into our house. I began wondering if he'd been trying to keep something else from getting in. I got so scared that I ended up telling Mum and Dad at dinner one night. Not everything. Not the voices, though, because I thought I sounded mad. Just about the man. And Dad's reaction surprised me. I described the coat, the height, the way he stood. Dad stopped eating and looked at me. "Where does he stand?" he asked me. "Different places." "Where did you see him first?" I pointed down the road. "Outside 284. Dad looked toward the window, then said, "Don't talk to him." And that annoyed me a bit, because he sounded exactly like Mrs. Chapman, and I didn't understand why they couldn't just tell me. "Do you know him?" I asked. "No." "You do," I said. I said no. Dad was irritated. "Who lived in that house before? Did you know them?" He looked at me then. "Which house?" 284. That was when Mum told me to stop asking questions. So naturally, I didn't. The name came later. Bill Wilkins. I'd heard adults mentioning it before. He was a previous resident. He was connected to that house. And once I'd heard the name, it started to make more sense to me. The man outside must be Bill. Of course, he'd lived there. And he died. And now something strange was happening inside his old house. Even at 17, I understood enough ghost stories to join those dots. And weirdly, thinking it was Bill made me less frightened. Because the ghost of a dead neighbour is horrible, but it's understandable, right? There's a reason for him to be there, a connection, a story. But I was wrong. One night I woke up because my sister was crying. She wasn't screaming or sobbing, just gently crying, but I'd heard her. Her room was just across the landing from mine. I opened my door and saw that her door was already open. I went in and she was sitting upright in bed. I asked her what was wrong and she pointed towards the corner of the room. There was nothing there. "What?" I asked. "There was a man." I felt cold immediately. What man? She shook her head. I don't know. He was standing there. What did he look like? I asked her. I don't know. You saw him, you must know what he looked like. But she explained that he wasn't looking at her. She didn't see the front of him. She pulled the blankets higher around her. He was facing the wall. I went downstairs. The back door was open. Dad always locked it. Always. I closed it and turned the key. Then I went and looked through the kitchen window. The man was there, across the road. But this time, he wasn't looking at 284. He was looking at us. Then he raised one arm, slowly, and he pointed. Not at me, but toward the narrow passage running beside our house. I stepped away from the window, just as the back door handle moved. Once. Stopped. Then moved again. Somebody was trying it from outside. I shouted for Dad, and the handle stopped. Dad came running downstairs, and I told him someone was outside. He unlocked the door, opened it. Nothing. The passage was empty. He went outside with a torch. Front garden, side passage, back garden, no one. Then my sister screamed. We both ran upstairs. She was standing in the hallway, pointing into my parents' bedroom. There was nobody there. Dad turned on every light. She kept saying, "He came upstairs." Who? The man. I asked if she meant the man from outside, and she looked confused. Then she shook her head. No, not him. And that was the moment everything changed. I'd been wrong about the man. Whatever was moving around our house wasn't him, because my sister had seen both. One outside, one upstairs, which meant the thing I'd been afraid of might have been the only reason the other one hadn't come in sooner. After that, I wanted to see him. I know how insane that sounds. I would sit beside my bedroom window hoping he appeared, because when he stood outside, nothing happened inside. But he stopped coming. 3 nights, 4, 5, and the house got worse. It learned our voices. That's the only way I can explain it. My mum would hear my sister calling from downstairs, but my sister would be asleep. Dad heard Mum say his name from inside the bathroom when she was outside hanging washing. I heard myself once. That was the worst. I was lying in bed, and from the bottom of the stairs, my own voice said, "Dad." Perfect. Exactly me. My accent, my tone, everything. Dad answered from his bedroom. "What?" I opened my door. "That wasn't me." Silence. Then my voice downstairs said, "Dad?" Dad came onto the landing. We both looked down the stairs. Nothing. Neither of us went down. 2 nights later, it nearly got me. I woke to Dad calling from downstairs. "Come down here a minute." Normal voice, nothing frightening. I got out of bed and opened the door. Dad was standing at the bottom of the stairs. He had his back to me, dressing gown on, bare feet. "What's wrong?" I said, stifling a yawn. He didn't turn. He said, "Come down." I took 3 steps, then behind me. My parents' bedroom door opened, and Dad stepped onto the landing. "What are you doing?" I stopped, completely frozen. The man at the bottom of the stairs didn't move. My father grabbed my shoulder, and neither of us spoke as we started to back up. Then, slowly, the other Dad looked up. I wish I could tell you he had a monster's face. That would be easier to get me head around. He looked like my dad, almost. But the proportions were all wrong. His smile seemed to begin before the rest of his face moved. And his eyes weren't looking at us. They were looking past us, toward my bedroom. Then something shifted behind him. Through the glass of the front door, there was a silhouette outside. The watcher, he'd come back. For the first time, I saw him move quickly. He crossed over the road. The thing wearing Dad's face turned back toward the door, just as the watcher reached the gate. The other dad stepped into the hallway and took a step towards the door. My real father pulled me backwards. "Bedroom," he said, and we ran. Mum and my sister were awake by now, and all four of us ended up inside my parents' room. Dad locked the door. From downstairs, we heard the front door opening. Then footsteps. One person entered, then another. We heard them walk into the front room and stop. Nothing happened for nearly a minute. Then someone downstairs said, "Wrong house." Same voice I'd heard outside my window. After that, silence. We stayed upstairs until daylight. Dad went down first. The front door was locked. The chain still on. No broken window, nothing missing, nothing disturbed. But the front room window had 2 handprints on it. One on the inside, one on the outside. Palm against palm, exactly opposite each other. Dad cleaned them off, and he never discussed what happened that night. A few months later, we moved house, and I never saw the watcher again. Years passed. The events at number 284 became famous. Books, documentaries, arguments. People still debate what happened there. And eventually I heard more about Bill Wilkins. For years I'd assumed the man outside was him. I'd built the whole thing around that idea. It made sense. Until I saw a photograph. Bill looked nothing like the watcher. Not even slightly. Different build, different face, different man. And suddenly, I remembered what the voice outside my bedroom had said. Wrong house. Maybe he hadn't been talking to me. Maybe he'd been talking to whatever was trying to get inside. I went back to Green Street once. It was decades later. I didn't knock at 284. I didn't even cross the road. I just stood opposite the house where I'd grown up. Different windows, different curtains, different car outside. It was someone else's home now. I felt ridiculous. A middle-aged lady standing on a pavement, thinking about something that had frightened her when she was 17. Then movement caught my eye, upstairs. A child was standing at my old bedroom window, a little boy. He was looking directly at me. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he raised his hand and pointed. I almost smiled, until I realised he wasn't pointing at me. He was pointing over my shoulder. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to see what it was. I walked back to my car, and I've never been back to Green Street, because after all these years, I still don't know who that man was. But I'm fairly certain of one thing. He wasn't watching the houses. He was watching for something to come out.
The Enfield Poltergeist case centred on Green Street, Enfield, beginning in 1977. The reported disturbances became one of Britain's best-known paranormal cases and remains heavily disputed. During the investigation, an unusual voice associated with the case identified itself as Bill Wilkins, a former resident of the house. The neighbouring family, the watcher, and the events in this story have been exaggerated or fictionalised for storytelling. I say this because there is no way of verifying it. It's just a tale that was told to us. Green Street is real. Bill Wilkins was real. And what happened there is still argued about today. Thank you for watching till the end. It's really appreciated. We aren't an AI channel, and all our videos are researched and created by our team, and this can take some time. We'd be grateful if you could subscribe so you don't miss the next dark tale from the Hag Raven. Until next time, take care, and in a bit.